So I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, John Karl, for more on the economic proposals the president made, calling on Congress to extend more benefits to the Small Business Administration, deferral of tax payments. We had heard talk of that before. The April 15 tax payment may not apply to certain corporations and individuals. The president's still calling for his payroll tax. That has not been warmly welcomed on Capitol Hill.
It has not been warmly welcomed by Democrats and even from some Republicans. But, George, I have to say, listening to the president here, it is stark how different he sounded tonight. We didn't hear two things that we've been hearing from him over and over again. One, we didn't hear him blame Democrats for exaggerating this and using it to make him look bad. We didn't hear him blame the news media for making the problem sound worse than it is. He seemed to directly acknowledge, really in a way that he has not until this moment, just how serious this is. I thought it was a very different tone from him. And it wasn't just the economic impact. Of course, he's been spooked by watching the stock market's reaction to all this. But you heard him, I thought, it struck a very different tone in addressing the seriousness of this threat. Remember, just 2 weeks ago, he was talking about how the number of cases might quickly go down to 0 in the United States. He just yesterday, George, compared this to the common flu. That was not the message that he had tonight.
Well, and John, the fact that he brought it into the Oval Office, we know what that's reserved for. The president knows that this is a threat to the country, a threat to the health of so many people. Also, in an election year, a threat to his presidency.
A threat to his presidency. That what he really wanted to do here, it seems to me, George, is he wanted to send the message that he understands, he is taking this seriously, and to insist that his administration has this under control. But again, that was not the tone. That the seriousness was not what we'd been hearing from the president. He had been much more cavalier about this, even as recently as yesterday. This was a very different tone from the president.
Big question now, John. Thank you. How will Congress respond? I want to bring in our chief congressional correspondent, Mary Bruce, for more on that. The president did lay out one proposal the Democrats have been calling for as well, expanding this paid family leave.
And, George, that is something that Democrats in the House expect to actually vote on tomorrow. They are working on a recovery package that includes several targeted measures like that paid family leave, also extended unemployment insurance, other measures that they believe will provide immediate relief. Now, we haven't seen the details yet, but it certainly sounds like the president may be able to get on board with some of these measures. But, of course, he's also calling for additional steps like that payroll tax cut, which both sides of the aisle have raised concerns about. Even Republicans say that may be more of a Band-Aid than an actual long-term solution here. And, George, even if this recovery package, those targeted measures pass in the House tomorrow, they face a very uncertain future over in the Senate, largely because it is simply still unknown how much all of this is going to cost.
And Mary, Congress is expected to go off on another break next week. Any sense of whether they can get this done right away? I mean, as you said, you know, the House wants to act tomorrow, but then they're going to send it over to the Senate. Will the House stay in and avoid their vacation in order to pass this?
It is a very good question. Democrats in the House have been scrambling to work with the administration to get something done here. In fact, we've learned that Nancy Pelosi spoke right before the president's remarks with Dr. Fauci and with Vice President Pence about these measures. They are scheduled to go on recess next week. So far, there are no changes to that. But Speaker Pelosi has, of course, made very clear. She says they are the captains of this ship. They will be the last to leave. This is something that they know is of utmost importance, and they really want to get something done here before they all head home.
Mayor, this is also hitting close to home on Capitol Hill. They're talking about suspending all public tours. The Capitol, a notoriously open government institution, government building.
Yeah, they are closing down tours, we know, in the coming days, but the Capitol is very much still working. Members of Congress are packed in the hallways as they try to tackle all of this, and it does raise a lot of interesting questions. While Leader Pelosi has made very clear that they are going to stay open and stay operational, some members we know are already taking matters into their own hands, essentially setting their own rules. Mitt Romney and others have told their staffers they can work from home. It also raises unique concerns for members of of Congress. It is, of course, noteworthy that 2/3 of the Senate qualify as a vulnerable population here because of their age. Members of Congress, of course, travel a lot. They spend a lot of time in large crowds. So this hits home for a lot of members of Congress as they not only try to decide how to tackle this crisis, but also have to consider their own personal health. And, of course, several members of Congress, 7 of them, have been self-quarantining out of an abundance of caution because of concerns that they came into contact with someone who tested positive.
Okay, Mary Bruce, thanks very much. I want to bring in our chief business and economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, for more on this as well. And Rebecca, we've seen the market, as you've been reporting all day, hit a bear market, 20% down since from the highs of February, since the start of this crisis. This week, a big drop, and then when the Wall Street believed that Congress was going to pass some stimulus measures. It jumped up when they appeared to be stalled. It went down again today. What's your sense of the reaction to the president's proposals tonight?
Well, if you look at the response in the futures market, which is foreshadowing what we might see tomorrow during the trading day, the futures market has actually been falling since the president's speech. And one of the things that stands out to a number of the economists and investors that I speak to is the idea that the president said tonight, this is not a financial crisis. But when you look at the stock market, now down 20% from those record highs, and a number of economists calling for the potential for a recession in this year, you can believe that there are those out there who disagree with that. Now, those who are calling for a recession at this point believe that it would be short-lived, that it would not mimic what we saw in 2008, but many of them believe that the fiscal stimulus, what the government will offer in response to this crisis, will be key in how long the severity of the crisis lasts. And in the message tonight, you had 2 sets of responses. You had the fiscal stimulus, the deferring of taxes, the small business loans, the paid sick leave for workers. But you also, on the flip side of that, had the travel, banning travel from Europe to the United States. The travel companies, the airlines, are already some of the hardest hit companies in this crisis at this point. United saying that they have seen bookings drop 70% domestically, and that they're actually seeing a twice as big hit to their business as they saw in the wake of 9/11. So you can imagine that those companies in particular are thinking about how they're going to weather this storm now with these 30 additional days where travel is not a part of their picture from Europe.
And one of the things we did not hear, Rebecca, was any targeted relief for those companies. That had been talked about earlier in the day.
Exactly. And you can imagine if there was targeted relief, that word bailouts would have started to come up. And that would harken back to the bailouts of 2008 and the financial crisis, where the banks and some of the auto companies got bailouts. That is difficult. That's tricky political territory to wade into at a moment like this, especially when so many Americans who came out of the financial crisis saw that the banks got back on their footing, but those Americans didn't see their own paychecks climb in the wake of the financial crisis. So you can imagine that that would be tricky political territory. But in an immediate sense, and Mary just shed some light on this, in the immediate sense, Congress, if they can pass the paid sick leave, if they can figure out deferred taxes, and especially those small business loans, because we know that small businesses have been weathering this storm. They've been hit, some of the harshest businesses in America. They've been hit the harshest in America of all businesses. So if they can pass those types of reforms, that will have a significant effect in an immediate sense on the economic crisis we're seeing right now, George.
Okay, Rebecca, thanks very much. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.